I watched the tracer round pass so close to my eye that the heat seared my eyelashes, and I knew with absolute mathematical certainty that I was already dead. It wasn't a fear response, it was a tactical calculation. We were in the Korangal Valley, deep in the Valley of Tears, and a catastrophic failure of intelligence had walked 3rd Platoon into a kill box the shape of a horseshoe. We were the iron, and the Taliban were the hammer. There were 20 of us. In 3 minutes, there were 14. I was the JTAC, Joint Terminal Attack Controller. My job was to talk to the sky, to bring down the wrath of God in the form of 500-pound JDAMs. But my radio, the PRC-117, had taken a piece of shrapnel through the main housing during the initial volley. The display was cracked, bleeding liquid crystal like black blood. Static hissed in my ear, a white noise funeral dirge. I was screaming into the handset, trying to reach the F-15 circling at 20,000 feet, but I was talking to ghosts. Lieutenant Miller grabbed my shoulder, his grip like a vice.
His face was caked in dust and blood, eyes wide with the frantic clarity of a man watching his command disintegrate. "Fix it, Sergeant. Get us air, or we die in this ditch." "It's dead, LT. The crypto is fried," I yelled back, ducking as a heavy machine gun chewed up the rock wall behind us. Stone splinters rained down on our helmets. We were pinned behind a low stone wall, an old shepherd's enclosure. The enemy had the high ground on 3 sides. They were walking their mortar fire in, closer by the meter. Thump, whistle, crack, thump, whistle, crack. The next adjustment would land right in our lap. I looked at the radio again. It was a brick. But then, instinct took over. Desperation is a hell of a technician. I bypassed the crypto security module, ripping out the encryption fill with my knife, forcing the radio into plain text mode. It was a violation of every protocol in the book. Broadcasting in the open meant the enemy could hear us, but we were dead anyway. I spun the frequency dial, hunting for anything, a stray recon net, a medevac frequency, even a local trucker channel.
Static. Just static. Then the hiss broke. It didn't sound like a digital transmission. It didn't have that robotic, compressed whine of modern military comms. It sounded warm, analog, like a tube radio from a bygone era. "Break, break," a voice cut through. "Granite 6, this is Watchtower. Adjust fire. Drop 50, left 20. You have infantry moving on your eastern flank. Defilade. Over." I froze. Granite wasn't our call sign. We were Viper. And Watchtower wasn't on our comms card. The voice was calm, almost bored. American accent, but deep, grainy, like gravel tumbling in a dryer. I keyed the mic, my hand shaking. "Station calling Granite. This is Viper 17. Identify. We are taking heavy fire. Who is this?" Silence, just the snap of bullets overhead. Then the voice returned, ignoring my confusion. "Viper, this is Watchtower. Forget the ID, son. You've got an RPG team setting up on the ridge, 2 o'clock high, behind the split rock. If you don't suppress them in 10 seconds, you're going to lose your machine gunner." I looked at the ridge. It was 800 meters out. I couldn't see anything but gray shale and scrub brush. "LT," I screamed. 2 o'clock, split rock, suppress it now." Miller didn't ask questions. He signaled the saw gunner. "Light it up, 2 o'clock." The gunner opened up, sending a stream of brass cascading onto the dirt. A second later, a massive secondary explosion bloomed on the ridge. The RPG team's ammo had cooked off. They had been there, invisible to the naked eye, seconds away from ending us. Miller looked at me, wild-eyed. "You got air on station?" "No," I whispered, pressing the headset tighter to my skull. "I got someone else." "Watchtower, this is Viper," I said. "Target destroyed. Who are you? Where are you?" "I'm high up, Viper. I've got the eyes of a hawk today. Listen to me. You need to move. They're flanking your left through the wadi, 3 minutes out. They're going to use the dried riverbed to come up right under your nose." This was impossible. The wadi was in a dead zone. No satellite could see into that crevice, and no drone was overhead. The only way to see into that wadi was to be standing on the sheer peak of the mountain directly above us, a peak that was jagged, exposed, and currently being hammered by mortar wind. LT, we need to shift fire to the wadi, left flank. The wadi is clear, Miller argued. We cleared it moving in. Watchtower says they're in it. Who the hell is Watchtower? Does it matter? The RPG was real. Miller cursed and redeployed 3 riflemen to the left wall. They waited. A minute passed. The silence was heavy, terrifying. Then the shadows in the wadi moved. Muzzle flashes lit up the dark depression. Our guys were ready. They cut the ambush down before it started. For the next 40 minutes, the voice guided us. It was a miracle of tactical omniscience. Watchtower called out reload times of the enemy machine guns. He warned us about a sniper shifting position 3 ridges over. He told us when to duck, when to shoot, and when to breathe. But the weirdness started to creep in. It wasn't just the analog static, it was the lingo. He called the enemy Charlies once, then corrected himself to Tangos. He referred to our air support request as spooky, an old term for gunships we hadn't used in decades. He didn't use grid coordinates, he used landmarks by the crooked tree near the white boulder. As the sun began to dip, casting long, bloody shadows across the valley, the situation grew desperate. We were low on ammo. The Taliban were massing for a final wave. I could feel the momentum shifting. They knew we were hurting. Viper, this is Watchtower, the voice crackled. It sounded weaker now, fading in and out of the static drift. They're grouping, 400 meters north, behind the terrace, approximately 50 packs. They're fixing bayonets, Sen. They're coming for the overrun. 50. We had 7 magazines left between us. Watchtower, we are combat ineffective, I said, my voice cracking. We can't hold 50. I know, the voice said. There was a sadness in it. A heavy, resigned sigh that chilled my blood more than the mountain air. You need the fast movers. Is your radio transmitting to the bird yet? I can transmit, I said, but I can't see the target. I can't designate. I'm blind behind this wall. I'm not, Watchtower said. I'll talk you onto it. Relay my corrections. I can't drop a JDAM on blind coordinates from an unknown source, I argued. The pilot won't take it. He'll take it if you tell him it's danger close and you're about to be overrun. Trust me, Viper. I've been on this rock a long time. Get your pen ready. The static surged, sounding like ocean waves. Coordinates follow, Watchtower said. He rattled off a string of numbers. I switched frequencies back to the emergency guard channel, praying the F-15s were still monitoring. Dude 2-1, this is Viper. Immediate suppression, danger close, coordinates to follow. The pilot's voice came back, crisp and clean, jarring after the gravelly tone of Watchtower. Dude 2-1, Viper. Copy, you are danger close. Read back coordinates. I fed him the numbers Watchtower gave me. Viper, confirm coordinates, the pilot said. That puts the impact point only 200 meters north of your position, and I'm showing that terrain as a vertical slope. There's nothing there on my thermal. Trust me, I screamed. There's a terrace shelf hidden by the overhang. They are massing. Drop it now or there's nobody coming home. Copy, Viper. Time of flight 30 seconds. Keep your heads down. I switched back to the analog frequency. Watchtower, birds are inbound. 30 seconds. Good copy, Viper, the voice whispered. It sounded distant now. Good copy. You boys keep your heads down. Don't let them get the flank. Always check your 6. Watchtower, we owe you a beer. Where are you extracting to? We can send the bird to cover your exfil. A laugh. A dry, rasping chuckle. Don't worry about me, son. I'm already home. Out. The line went dead. Not static. Just dead air. 10 seconds later, the world ended. The JDAN hit the mountain. The overpressure sucked the air out of our lungs. The ground rippled like water. The sound was a physical blow that knocked us flat. When the dust settled, the silence was absolute. The hammer had fallen. The enemy force was vaporized. We waited for the counterattack, but it never came. Watchtower had been right. They were all there, and they were all gone. We held the position until dawn.
At first light, a QRF, quick reaction force, broke through and linked up with us. We were battered, dehydrated, and shaking, but we were alive. As we were packing up, Miller walked over to me. He pointed up at the peak, the jagged spire that overlooked the entire valley. That's where he was, right? Your watchtower guy? Yeah, I said, looking up. The view from up there must be perfect. We've got to sweep the area anyway, Miller said. Intel wants to know who the hell was up there. Special Forces? CIA? Nobody operates alone in the Korangal. We took a squad and made the climb. It was brutal. A near vertical ascent over loose shale. It took us 3 hours to reach the summit. When we crested the ridge, weapons raised, expecting to find a sniper hide or a recon team packing up their gear, we stopped cold.
There was nobody. The peak was a small platform of rock, barely 10 feet wide, whipped by the wind. There were no footprints, no spent brass, no crushed MRE wrappers, no signs of life at all. The dust was undisturbed, settled in a way that takes years, not hours. He must have been using long-range optics, one of the privates said. Maybe he was on the next peak? No, I said, walking to the edge. The angle into the wadi. This is the only spot. You can't see it from anywhere else. I looked down at the rock surface. Something caught the glint of the sun. Wedged into a crack in the stone, protected from the wind, was a small metal object. I pried it loose. It was a Zippo lighter, brushed chrome, rusted at the hinges. I flipped it over. Engraved on the side was a unit crest, the 1st Cavalry Division. Below that, a name and a date. SGT Harris, I Drang Valley, 1965. I felt a cold shiver start at the base of my spine and wrap around my chest. Vietnam. Sarge, look at this, the private called out. He was pointing at a fissure in the rock wall behind us. Tucked deep inside, almost invisible, was a radio. But it wasn't a PRC-117. It wasn't even from this century. It was a PRC-77, an old, heavy green box with a whip antenna that had snapped off long ago. The battery housing was corroded shut. The handset cable was rotted away. It had been there for decades, likely left by Russian Spetsnaz, or maybe a lost CIA advisor from the 80s who had acquired American gear. But as I leaned in closer, I saw the frequency dials. They were set to the exact analog frequency I had tuned to in my desperation. That's impossible, Miller whispered, standing over my shoulder. That thing hasn't had power since Reagan was president. I reached out and touched the metal casing. It was freezing cold, stone cold. But then I saw it. In the dust gathered on top of the radio, there was something that made no sense. In the thick layer of gray silt that covered the ancient device, someone or something had drawn a map with a fingertip. It was a crude sketch of the Horseshoe Valley below. There were X's marking our position, and arrows.
Arrows showing the enemy flanking movements through the wadi. The lines in the dust were crisp, sharp. They were fresh. I looked around the desolate peak. The wind howled, sounding like static. I thought about the voice, the Charlies, the spooky, the calm, resigned sadness of a man who knew he wasn't going anywhere. Sarge, the private asked, looking nervous, what do we do with it? I looked at the lighter in my hand, then at the dead radio with the fresh map on it. I thought about the 14 men walking down the mountain who should have been dead. Leave it, I said. My voice felt tight. Leave it exactly where it is. I placed the Zippo back on the rock, right next to the radio. Let's go, I ordered, turning my back on the impossible. We're done here. As we scrambled back down the shale, sliding and cursing, I kept my radio off. But halfway down, just for a second, I swear my headset crackled one last time, even though the battery was pulled. It was just a burst of white noise, but inside the static, faint as a memory, I heard the click of a mic being keyed and a whisper that drifted away on the wind. "Clear skies, Viper. Clear skies." I didn't look back. There are things in war that you put in a report, and there are things you take to your grave. I knew which one this was. We walked out of the Valley of Tears alive, guided by a ghost on a dead frequency, and I never touched an analog dial again as long as I served.